right, we are live. Oh, Ian, I can't
I
actually.
love
There we
I
go.
love that countdown music. I kind of want to I kind of want us to play it again. Why don't we just because it's like right on the dot, why don't we why don't we give people a few more minutes to join? Um, yeah, we got like just a handful of people starting to trickle in now. So do you want to give them a can we redo the 30-second timer just to hear that
another
without
another
music
30
again?
seconds. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, now we are live for real.
This time we're actually doing it. Awesome. Well, I think people will kind of continue to trickle in, but for those who have joined already, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to us yap about Snowflake. So this is a new series Jeff and I are starting that we're incredibly excited about because with Snowflake, they are constantly pushing out new features. We just got out from Snowflake Summit where there was a ton, and then every month, if you follow along with the release notes, it's kind of like drinking from the fire hose, where there's all these kind of little nuggets of new functionality that will benefit you in your day to day, but it's hard to keep on top of. So this new is a new series we're starting called Last Month in Snowflake, where we are going to be covering kind of all of the things that Snowflake announced, but really distilling it down in a very consumable way, talk about what it means without you having to kind of pour through these different pages, how it'll affect your day to day, share our own kind of opinions on these as Jeff and I are kind of in Snowflake all day and as practitioners, so can cut the marketing fluff and just tell you what it means for your kind of day to day in Snowflake. So this is our first one doing it. Very open to people's like feedback. So please share it kind of throughout or at the end if this is a helpful format or if there's things you'd like us to do differently, because we're planning to do this every month. Jeff, I think you already published. Go ahead.
I was gonna say one thing I'll add to the introduction is that this is the summit month. So this month will feel very different than future months when we do Last Month in Snowflake. So we'll really be focusing on features that maybe aren't as widely publicized or haven't had as much hype around them. So this month it may feel like a little bit of repeat for some people, but we also have some non-summit announcements baked in here as well.
Yeah, 100%. So why don't we jump into it? So as Jeff mentioned, we'll start with talking about Summit, because that kind of Summit was just last month in June. So that was kind of a key thing where they announced that. And then throughout the month of June, a lot of those things they announced either went to public preview or private preview or GA as part of that. So we'll cover that for those who weren't at Summit, or even if you were, I think you'll find it interesting to get some additional context set on those features. And then after that, we'll kind of get into like what's the net new stuff. So you can kind of consume this in two parts. If you're already very familiar with what this is talked about, what was talked about at Summit and announced, maybe the second part will be more interesting, where we highlight some of the new things. So with that, let's jump into talking about the kind of different things at Summit. So the way we've structured this, you'll notice the first kind of section is called platform economics. So Jeff, who kind of did this recap on Snowflake Summit, themed it around kind of the core in the keynote that Christian Kleinerman, the VP of product, gave. There were kind of different themes of things people want, and then different announcements fell into those themes. So one of the first themes was platform economics, where people want to get ultimately more efficient, more bang for their buck. So one of the big new announcements in that space was they've announced changes to Snowpipe. So for those who don't know, Snowpipe is one of the kind of first party services that Snowflake offers to bring data into Snowflake. Jeff, would you agree it's kind of most common for any like event data where you like, or anything pretty much you can drop into like S3 or object storage? It is the best way to like load something from that standpoint.
Yeah, it's great for event data, but it's also great even just for like batch data. So I use it all the time as just like a hands-off way to load data if I'm not going to use a data loading platform.
Right. So it's basically like if you can get it into a cloud storage bucket, you can point Snowpipe to that thing and it brings data in. Right. I think that's the only way it works actually, compared to like having to kind of figure out copy into statements from stages and things like that. So
Right. Scheduling
that's
commands.
Snowpipe. And so very common way to bring data in. And historically, I actually posted this about LinkedIn recently because I think it's a big deal for anyone who cares about costs really on Snowflake. With Snowpipe, there's a, like, I don't want to call it a hidden charge because it's available in the documentation if you read it, but no one really reads the documentation. And basically, there's two charges you pay for in Snowflake. So with Snowpipe specifically, there's the serverless compute costs. Snowpipe is a serverless service, so there's compute costs you pay for actually loading the data into Snowflake, and then there's a charge you actually get billed per credit, or sorry, per file that gets loaded. So the implications of that are certain customers can get burned if your like files are not correctly sized. So there's like a target file size you want to hit with Snowpipe. And if you're have tons of really small files, you can basically end up paying more than you should. So Snowflake has and shift and getting rid of that is annoying. It requires engineering effort. Someone has to go think about like, how do I batch files and what would be the impact of batching those files, like waiting until more data has accumulated before we load that. What's the impact on latency? So it enforces like time and these unnecessary trade-offs you don't want to make. So they're completely changing the pricing model, and it's much simpler. It is like, how much data did you load? You pay proportional to that. So there's not these two separate buckets. There's not like a serverless compute aspect and a file thing. You don't have to think about, if your files are sized correctly. You just pay for the amount of data you're bringing into Snowflake. And they've run the numbers on this, and it sounds like on average it works out to 50% better pricing. So this will be huge for people using Snowpipe. I think the big question people have is like, when do I get to use this? When does this go in place? And I think the answer is it's going to be rolling out over the coming year. I don't think it's just going to go on like that. I think it'll be kind of staged throughout regions, et cetera. So don't expect this. This is not in place today, but this is something that will make it much more efficient to bring in your data. Oh, Jeff, you're muted.
My bad. I was just saying I love that they're changing it so they're no longer incentivizing you to use bad data engineering practices by making like fewer files that are too big. So
yeah, so, yeah, for sure. All right, I'll let you speak to this one.
Sure. So spend anomalies in Snowflake. So you could set a notification anytime that your daily spend spikes above a certain threshold, or like a kind of an out of the norm type of threshold. The thing that I want to call out here that I really like is that you can enter in an email address here, any email address that's like verified, how you have to verify your Snowflake email addresses. But this is a change from Snowflake monitors, where previously like only account admins can get Snowflake monitors sent to their email or the alerts when you hit a certain spend threshold. So this is a very welcome change that you don't need to just add a bunch of people as account admin in order to get these notifications.
Oh, I didn't realize you could only do it to account admins.
Yeah, that was one of the downsides of monitors, for sure.
I see. Okay, interesting. Nice. So yeah, I guess these are, and then for the kind of monitoring spend, the nice thing is you don't necessarily have to set a fixed threshold. So you can have this tell you if something's wonky automatically. I have no idea if they account for seasonality. Someone can correct me. Like
Oh, Ian, your Wi-Fi seems to be a little wonky here very suddenly. So I'm going to keep going while Ian's Wi-Fi is currently frozen, but let's kind of see what happens when he comes back here. So adaptive warehouses, this is one that Ian was going to speak to, but he's currently frozen on the screen.
Did I just cut out fully?
So we'll try and keep going here. Oh, Ian, you're back.
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, I think it's just bad Wi-Fi. I'm gonna switch to my tether from my phone, and then why don't you jump ahead to like the next slide, and then we can come back to adaptive warehouses.
Okay, sure. So other platform announcements. So Gen 2, this is a little bit old news because we've already done a webinar on it. It was announced May 5, but it was a summit announcement. So we're including it here. Budgets by query tag and object tags. This is actually pretty huge because before you were only doing budgets by warehouses and Snowflake was showing you cost observability by warehouses, causing companies to proliferate warehouses and create more warehouses. But now this is like a smarter way to create budgets. So that's pretty cool. Organizational usage views. So think about like including query history across multiple accounts or any or many of those tables that are normally in the account usage views will begin to show up in organizational usage views. They are up to 24 hours delayed, so kind of caution there. And this is a premium feature where Snowflake is actually billing you for the storage costs that they're incurring. Obviously, there's their views, so only the underlying data has the storage cost that's in their Snowflake account, but they're going to be passing that charge on to you if you decide to opt into the organizational usage views. Ian, are you feel like you're ready from a Wi-Fi standpoint for me to?
Yeah, let's try it out. It's not letting me switch to my phone.
Okay,
we'll go back to adaptive warehouses. So where I don't know where I cut out on the previous one with anomalies, but it was basically like I'm not 100% sure how seasonal it is. So if there's like day of week things, know that it may not account for that. But someone else can call me out on that if that's wrong. So adaptive warehouses, the big thing here was, Snowflake, like the virtual warehouse has been the power horse of Snowflake for forever. And it's like a big part of what made them so unique is you can have all these different specified sizes. You can like have completely separated compute for each like team or tool or et cetera. Adaptive warehouses flips that on its head, and we'll talk about why. But instead of having these isolated warehouses where each team has their own fixed set of resources that cannot ever be used by anyone else, Snowflake is introducing a new primitive, which essentially is closer to like a model that you would get in a BigQuery, like a truly serverless model where you submit your query to Snowflake, and there's still a pointer for like a warehouse, which we'll talk about. But broadly speaking, think about it as like you submit your query to Snowflake and you never have to think about what warehouse it's running on, what the size is. It goes into this giant pool of computing resources. Snowflake will automatically select what's the right size to run it on, and then pick that size in this pool, run your query, and turn it back to you. So that's kind of the big change here, is you no longer have to think about setting all of, and this is showing kind of the screen here is showing the before and after of like the old warehouse setup on the left, where you had to think about a auto suspend period and how many clusters you'd have in your warehouse. So like how much you wanted it to horizontally scale, the size. And also you have to think about now with the recent announcements, like standard versus Gen 2, like what type. So in this new world of adaptive warehouses, you pretty much just set a maximum amount you can spend in an hour, right? So there's still this concept of warehouses, but it's really like, there's no, like when you hit create new warehouse, it's not like pointing that to a specific set of compute, right? It's really just like an arbitrary layer, like a pointer at the top that says queries are going to be constrained to this maximum credit limit, but they're still go running from this shared pool. So in this picture on the right, you could have these 3 different warehouses. They're all using the same resources under the hood, but Snowflake's kept that abstraction of warehouse, which is helpful from an administrative standpoint. So you can still have kind of cost controls on each of these teams. You'll still be able to do things like budgets and resource monitors on warehouses, because there's still this warehouse object or concept, but the key changes under the hood. There's this serverless, or this pool of compute resources that you don't have to think about the configuration. Snowflake automatically points it to the right size. So the reason they did this is because many customers end up spending a lot of time thinking about what's the right warehouse size to run this job on, and how do I run this job in the most cost effective way. And Snowflake's all about simplicity. So they're introducing this new option as a new mechanism where if you are having issues like figuring out the right size or spending a lot of time trying to figure out routing of queries, you can instead use this adaptive warehouse option where it takes care of all that for you. Anything else you want to add there, Jeff, that I missed?
Yeah, one thing is just like a little call out. This configuration here that you can set kind of a max credits and a max size is a little bit confusing because those two things are at odds, because we know an extra small consumes 1 credit per hour.
Yeah.
So
yes. So
I think that it should.
is, and this is something there. I have I think some inside knowledge that is probably fine to share, which is I suspect this second setting will potentially go away. So this feature is in
Okay.
private preview. So know that things on the screen are going to change subject to feedback. But
Yep.
this feedback you've shared, Jeff, is a point of confusion for sure. So I'll tell you what that is. I think it's like a hint that kind of helps tell what size to start with, or it's either like, or maybe actually per this, yeah, this goes to show how confusing it is. It's like a max limit that could be it could run
Yeah.
on. So yeah, it is
Oh,
kind of contradictory. I suspect this will go away and you will just
I
set
hope
a
so.
maximum amount of compute that you would consume.
Cool.
So
Let's
I'll add two other thoughts on this before we move on, because this is a big one. Like, this is something that every customer I've been talking to has been asking about. And what does this mean? So a couple things to call out. One, Christian Kleinerman specifically called this out in the keynote of like, this is a hard problem to solve and it will take us some time to get right. So reading between the lines, I would not expect, don't be counting on, oh, you know, Q3 this year, we're going to have adaptive warehouses in GA. It's most like, I would, if I were to guess, it'll be like GA by the end of the year or GA sometimes next year. And there's still some open questions on like, how will it be? How's it going to be priced? My guess, I don't know this. My guess is similar to Gen 2 warehouses. There will be there'll be like a slight premium on it, because there's all this, it'll be a different pricing model, right? Because there's Snowflake has to account for like having all of these warehouses sitting there in this like giant serverless pool. So know that, yeah, it'll be a great feature for certain use cases where you want to abstract and not have to think about warehouse sizing and just have Snowflake figure out the right warehouse size. If you have workloads running on very specific warehouse sizes where you want tight control and you're confident in how you're making those sizing decisions, that may not be the best choice to use. So it's good. You'll have more options to change kind of how you do these things.
absolutely. All right, this one we covered, platform governance. So I think I'm going to make up a little bit of time here by cruising through these. So I'll call out some of, I think, the most interesting ones, and then you can decide on your own which ones you think are the most interesting. But sensitive data insights, so auto classifies and tags PII. So I haven't looked into exactly how you do this yet and how you configure it and stuff, but this seems like a very promising feature. From what I understand, Snowflake is basically scanning your data. It's looking at the metadata like column names. So if it says like something like customer social security number, Snowflake will take that metadata, the column name, and understand that it's PII and tag it. Another interesting one, my favorite one that I'm using every single day now, is passkeys. If you don't know what passkeys are, it's an alternative really to like user and password or MFA. So when you click sign in, you no longer have to reach for your phone and click the Duo MFA. If you use a password manager like Bitwarden or 1Password, etc., you can store your passkey there, and it's just
Oh
a
my
button
God.
on your screen. Yeah.
That is like, I get frustrated every time I have to log into Snowflake, because I like, sometimes I don't have my phone at my desk. So I'll be like, oh, I
Yeah.
have to log into Snowflake. I'll like go into the living room and like grab my phone, and it like drives me nuts. So
So
that
now
is
it just pops up on your screen and you click basically, yes, this passkey, and then boom, you're
okay.
logged in, which is so great.
Wow, that is amazing. We need to make more noise about this, because I feel like this is something that like improves
Yeah.
everyone's.
I could record like a little GIF or something showing how it works.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Side note. That actually
Anything
is
else?
like maybe the biggest quality of life change of all these.
Oh,
Announcements for
totally.
people.
Totally.
I'll talk on the like. I think this third bullet point is kind of an interesting one, where like Snowflake historically has kind of left this area of like data governance and data cataloging to partners. It's very clear that they're now like, no, you're going to do your data cataloging in Snowflake now, and not just worry about Snowflake resources, but also track other assets like things from Tableau, DBT, Airflow. I think there's kind of two things driving that. One is customers want that. They want a place where they can track all their assets. Two, I think Databricks is making a lot of noise about Unity catalog, and they're selling the story of like, this is an end-to-end catalog for all of your stuff. I think they even have like a Power BI integration. So my gut is this is in response to kind of Databricks on, because when you get these bake-offs, right, and everyone who's evaluating a platform will look at Snowflake and Databricks now, right? And if Databricks is going and telling the story that people care about of you manage all of your data assets, regardless of whether they're Databricks using our catalog. Enterprise probably value that, and Snowflake needs to have to come out and be able to say, no, you can do that here too. So I think this is interesting, right? Because if you're in the market for a data catalog, or currently, paying a bunch of money for a Colibra or a Alation or an Atlan, Snowflake's kind of calling out that, like, hey, we're moving in that direction. Yeah.
Totally. And from what I understand, they'll inspect your Tableau data sources. They're basically reaching outside of Snowflake and say, here's some stuff that's not even sourced from Snowflake, but it exists over there in Tableau, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving into the data engineering, we're still in Summit announcements. So these are all from early June. Snowflake OpenFlow. So this would be like an alternative to Fivetran and similar data loading tools. So this is a data loading platform built on Apache NiFi. Apache, of course, being like the open source godfather of data engineering. I don't know, like Apache's got
everything.
A
lot of stuff. Kind of like a lot of software. I had literally never heard of. Is it NiFi or NiFi? I don't even know how you say it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
I had never, or NiFi. I had never heard of it before, but apparently it's been around for a while, which both scares me and is good, right? It scares me because it's like, okay, there's this like ancient software that is now powering this thing. On the flip side, data loading software, you want to be reliable. And that also tells you that this has been potentially, it has been hardened, right, on stuff for a while. So yeah, I mean, coming back to your point, this is kind of interesting, right? Because like coming back what I just said on the previous slide of like Snowflake's going up and being like, we're now your data catalog and data governance tool. You probably don't need to go buy a separate catalog. There's another announcement coming out, which we'll talk about. That's like another step. They're very much like not afraid. This is the first summit, in my opinion, where it's like, we're not afraid to openly come out and step on the toes of our partners, right? It's like, this is a direct, like, it's funny how like Fivetran, for example, was a platinum sponsor, the highest level sponsor, like probably spent $1 million sponsoring Snowflake Summit. And then OpenFlow was literally one of the biggest announcements. And it's essentially like, you don't need to go pay for a ingestion tool. You can just use our thing, which will do ingestion for you.
Yeah.
And if you're a customer, like that's a no brainer. Like if I can just use Snowflake and I don't have to sign a separate MSA and data processing agreement and vendor agreement with this other third party to bring my data into Snowflake, why would you ever go use Fivetran if it, again, assuming it works and is reliable, which still good, get there, right? So
yet to be seen on the reliability and also the pricing. I haven't really found much information on it. If it's just, who knows? You're setting up a warehouse and it's just warehouse pricing, or if they're actually paying by volume.
It is, but what we're seeing, like, look at what they did with Snowpipe. They're making ingestion cheaper. Like Snowflake makes their money on compute. They don't, strategically, if you're a company trying to bring if you're a business, a cloud platform like Snowflake, and you're trying to bring everyone's data into your platform so they can go do things that earn you money and drive business value for the customers, you want to make ingestion as easy as possible. It's kind of surprising that they've frankly waited this long, right? If you think about what's the key to getting value out of a data platform, you need to load data into the data warehouse. And historically, it's been like, go use Fivetran. So it's very much, my point being, it's very much in their interest to make this really good and don't make it ridiculously expensive. Otherwise, people won't want to bring data in. So
totally,
they need to execute on that, obviously, but like that's the strategy, is make it cheap and make it available to everyone. So there's never a data source that someone doesn't want to bring in because they don't have a tool like Fivetran.
Right. And it's pretty easy to be cheaper than Fivetran. So hopefully they'll be blowing that out of the water.
They love to raise prices. Okay.
All right. My favorite announcement and favorite like enhancement in Snowflake in years, Snowflake Workspaces. I'm calling this the coolest feature announced in June. If you haven't tried Workspaces yet, it's really easy to get started. Just like instead of creating new worksheet, create new workspace and off you go. If you want to connect a Git repository, there's a little bit, you have to create the Git integration first. There's a GUI that kind of walks you through it. But I really love Workspaces because it has file management. Even if you don't have a Git repository connected, you have a folder structure, a file tree, a traditional file tree, just like you have in a real IDE. So now I can organize, instead of organizing worksheets into folders, which was really clunky, and well, it still is a little bit clunky, the way that you organize worksheets into folders. I can now just have SQL files in folders and have full control over how I organize the stuff. You could see that there's some really cool layout stuff coming here. And we're going to talk next about running DBT inside of Snowflake as well. The inline Copilot is also pretty cool. You can hit Control I think, or Command I, and it brings up inline Copilot. And it seems to do much better than, what do they call the agent, the chat in the bottom right? Like the Snowflake analyst or something, Cortex analyst, is really bad with like Snowpipe and things outside of select statements. So if you say like, create me a stage and a Snowpipe and this and that, it actually kind of gets it wrong. Whereas I've had much better results from this inline Copilot here. Next announcement, coupled with workspaces, but there's a lot more that goes beyond workspaces here, is DBT in Snowflake, including the new DBT Fusion engine. So we can now develop, schedule, and observe DBT projects directly in the Snowflake UI. And in our blog post that I had on last month in Snowflake June, I have tons of screenshots here of what you can do with DBT in Snowflake, including observing historical runs, looking at that the timeline view of each model, so you could see where your bottlenecks are, just like they have in DBT Cloud. So I think that this is also a pretty big breakthrough. But I would say that Workspaces has completely changed how I work in the Snowflake UI, because I don't use worksheets anymore. I only use Workspaces. DBT, in my current role, I do a little bit less DBT development now that I'm working for Ian than I did, in this 5 years leading up to that. So I haven't done a ton of DBT in Snowflake. I did have a few observations, though, is that like there's a cold start time. It seems to be a little bit long, so hopefully Snowflake will fix that. And the logs don't stream kind of as you go. They all show up at the end. So you have to really read the timestamps to see where your bottlenecks are. It's a little bit tougher to parse because the logs aren't streaming. And the other thing is there's no command line interface. So you can't just type like DBT commands. You have to kind of do it through the GUI and add your flag. So if you want to say, like -- select my model with a plus sign, there's a very like kind of strange interface to do that because there's no command line. So those are like kind of the cons of it, but I think overall this is a hugely exciting feature that you don't need to kind of go to another platform to do this.
Yeah, there's another one. Sorry, my Wi-Fi has been absolute garbage at this co-working office we're at. So there's another one of kind of in that theme of, I don't know, kind of stepping on toes of partners a bit, in my opinion. Like if you're DBT, you can't be stoked about Snowflake just being like, hey, don't go pay them. You can use this thing for free. Now, obviously this will not stack up to what you would get in DBT Cloud, but it gives you a bunch of the stuff that people go to those platforms for.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I don't want to self-host a thing to run this thing.
Although DBT Labs was able to eke out a licensing agreement, so it's not just DBT Core, the free open source one. There's also DBT Fusion, which Snowflake is licensing from them. So I don't know anything about the specifics, but perhaps it's a per model execution. Like, hey, give us like a fraction of a penny.
I doubt it. There's no way Snowflake's paying DBT to do it. My gut is it's a get more people onto the Fusion engine, so that. Yeah.
Oh, they're definitely paying money to use DBT Fusion. Yeah, they have to. That's
okay.
Kind of, yeah. That's
well, I don't know. Anyways, pure speculation.
Okay.
Open question, right?
That's why
the commercials of the agreement are not public, or the partnership.
They're not known, right? But the reason why DBT Labs didn't open source it is because they didn't want everyone doing like what Fivetran did and said, hey, now you can run.
Well, yeah, but that's a different thing, right? So the reason they didn't open source it is so there can't be like other competitor products who are like, here's a cheaper version of DBT Cloud. But I think with Snowflake, they probably made an explicit decision. Who knows? Maybe they're paying them, or maybe they're like, Snowflake has 12,000 customers, right? There's probably some insane amount of DBT customers that use that are on Snowflake, right?
I think it's over 60%.
Strategically, there you go. Strategically, if you know all those people are going to be using DBT through this hosted version, you want to get them on Fusion so that down the road it's easier to bring them onto DBT Cloud. That would be my hypothesis of why. Anyways, speculation, but spicy. Speaking of spicy.
Postgres in Snowflake. Why did anyone ever want this feature? Well,
Yeah,
I think it's an AI play because AI agents love to build apps with Postgres app backends. So I think, you're chatting with your new Snowflake agent. Snowflake is very much pushing AI and pushing this concept of agents, creating apps within Snowflake. So it makes sense to have Postgres as a backend for apps that you're building in Snowflake.
I'll caveat that, like the headline is for sure like AI is a big part of it, but like more broadly speaking, Snowflake wants to bring more use cases onto Snowflake. And what do other use cases look like other than data engineering? It's applications, right? And what does an application need? It needs a operational database. It does not need micro partitions which compress 500,000 records per file. Right. So a lot of people try and use Snowflake for that operational purposes, which is not really built for, but now they can just be like, oh, you need an operational database. Here's like, click a button, you now have Postgres in your database. So I agree, like the story of 2025 and probably next year is AI, but also there's a separate of like theme of like just make it easier to build applications in Snowflake.
Hey, well, speaking of AI, whoops, let's move on to the AI section of our presentation.
Yes.
Okay, semantic views are a new object type that you can create in Snowflake. The purpose is to let AI agents understand your data better. And of course, you can, there's a private preview feature that lets AI actually create the semantic views. So it's like full dog food at that point.
Yeah, AI for your AI. Yeah, so semantic views are cool. Like if anyone's coming from the Looker world, I find like the easiest analogy of semantic views, if you're familiar with Looker, is like, think of it as like Snowflake's version of LookML, but built specifically for AI. So there's kind of two purposes they state for this. They're like, oh, BI tools will be able to use a semantic view to like imagine power like a no code interface to be like, I want this metric grouped by this dimension, and the BI tool just knows what is available to expose to the users in a GUI. That was like what LookML was used for. And I think Power BI may have, I'm less familiar with Power BI, but I think they have something similar. The bigger use case, like the real driver of why do we need semantic views, is fuel for AI. Like everyone knows AI. It used to be called prompt engineering, and now I think it's called context engineering.
Yep.
In the world of Twitter or X, I'm still going to call it Twitter because I think X is a dumb name. So in the world of Twitter, yeah, people talk about context engineering for AI. You need to just feed them context. Well, what does an AI need in order to generate valid SQL? It needs really good metadata and information about like, so it doesn't just dream up a column that doesn't exist, right? So that's what semantic views do, is you can carefully describe what's in a table. Not just in a table, actually. So a view can point to multiple tables, right? I don't know. I haven't mentally figured out what's the right way to like, how many do you combine, but you can basically specify multiple tables. You can describe what's in each table. You can define how the tables relate to each other. So how can they be joined? And you can define what are the different metrics that are available. And so for all of these different things, you're going to have descriptions, and you also have synonyms, which is really cool, because someone could say revenue and someone could say sales, and they may mean the exact same thing, but your column's called revenue. So how do you tell the AI that when someone's like, what were my sales last month, they actually also meant what was my revenue last month, is the same thing. So that's what these will do. And essentially they're going to be used primarily in Cortex Analyst. So Cortex Analyst is the service where you type in a question and you get back SQL. And then I think in the UI version, it will actually just like execute that SQL. So this is really, again, fuel for that AI, of that dream experience if you ask a question about data and you get an answer back.
Perfect. Yeah, 100%. Should we keep going on to AI SQL here?
Yeah, I'll cover this one really quickly. So the big one of the other big announcements they made was something called AI SQL. Now, I personally think this is like took me a bit to wrap my head around this. Like, it's a bit of a rebrand because we already had LLM functions in
Right.
SQL, right? Like, you could already do AI in SQL. I think the difference here is they've introduced a new family of functions, which they said is like built on a new engine. TBD whether that's marketing speak or not, but I'm sure there was some engineering that went into this. And what's really cool is basically previously you had to do kind of like row-wise operations on LLMs. As a side note, this is like extremely dangerous from a cost standpoint. Literally in this week alone, I've had 2 customers reach out to me being like, we just spent $10,000 on a single query because someone did, you know, slapped AI into a query and it just like churned through, millions, maybe billions of records, and you're paid charged on tokens. So, side note, that is a separate thing to think about, and I don't think Snowflake yet has a solution I'm aware of imposing a limit on how much you can potentially spend on an AI query, which is scary. I'm sure it'll come, and if they don't have this plan, I'm going to be giving them that feedback of like, you need to put in better cost controls in place, otherwise big enterprises aren't going to adopt this. Because like one of the customers just turned off the feature. They're like, I can't use this uh if a developer can just like easily go spend 10 grand, right? Like,
Yeah.
understandably, and as he should rightfully be concerned about that. So anyway, sorry, AI has been around in SQL for a while. Historically, you could only call like an LLM function row by row. What this does, which is really cool, is you can do functions that are like scanning multiple rows across a column and then aggregating that, right? So you could you could feed it a subset of, or an entire set of customer reviews and say, summarize the top 5 themes in these reviews, right? So
Mm-hmm.
previously you would have had to run that row by row and then figure out some way to aggregate that in SQL. I don't know how you do that. So this is very powerful. I'll share
Yeah.
another example that's like I think is really cool, is like, think about how much people have unstructured data, like PDFs, right? Every enterprise has PDFs sitting around, right? So imagine having a folder, like thousands of PDF you load into Snowflake, and then you write a query on it saying like, summarize all the documents which, mention this language. Like, I could have used this recently when we had to do a review of like legal contracts we've signed with customers. And there's only like, I think less than 100, but like still manually one by one going through these documents and trying to pick out keywords of like things you have to do. That's something you can now do with this. So pretty cool new capabilities.
Yeah. One of the themes from Snowflake Summit, which maybe doesn't come across in this slide deck, is the use of unstructured data. So, I mean, we are calling it out here PDF, MP3, TXT, PNG, doc, but you can now load into a table a bunch of PDFs or a bunch of MP3s. So let's say it's going to be call center transcripts, and maybe they're in MP3 format. So they're not transcripts, they're recordings, right? So you can actually go against the AI and say, how many of these call center phone calls have complaints, and have it AI ag that, which, as we said before, extremely expensive, but extremely powerful, because imagine the amount of like data science horsepower or like human engineering it would have taken to do that previously. And now you can write a simple AI ag query that's going against your MP3 files. The other thing I'll say here is the interface that Snowflake has provided for the unstructured data. So you have a table with, let's say, like 1 row per whatever, like call center event, and then it has information about that event in like normal data types. But then when you have your MP3s or your PDFs, they have it so it shows up in the cell like that, and you can click on them and inspect them and stuff. So it is actually a very cool interface to explore the unstructured data. So unstructured was a huge theme this year at Summit, which I haven't really done too much thinking about until this year, but I could just see so many use cases just to stuff all your unstructured data into Snowflake.
Yeah. One last comment I'll add on this super quick, and then we should move on, that I think is kind of interesting. So when I started my career as a data scientist, we had teams. I worked at Capital One, so a credit card company. Well, sorry, yeah, dumb. Everyone knows Capital One. So I worked at Capital One, and we'd have, data scientists spend like months working on how do we classify sentiment in transcripts or customer reviews, or call transcripts, customer reviews online, etc. And like come up, and it was like you'd like do like word counts. Like there was all these like terrible methods of like you count words, you try and like use different like ML models, and you spend forever. And it's just mind blowing how like anyone now can literally slap a AI sentiment or tell me was this positive or negative, and this AI will do a better job than humans really on answering that task and do it in a split second. So it's just like something that previously took like 6 months with questionable output is like you now have answered. Kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, that is pretty cool how far we've come there. Okay. Cortex agents, I think, again, we'll try and make up a little bit of time here by kind of breezing through this. I haven't used Cortex agents yet, so I'm not exactly sure what they're like, but the point is that you're embedding them in Slack, you're embedding them in Teams, or a Streamlit app, which of course you can host directly in Snowflake with Snowflake security. So more or less you're building agents to answer specific questions, give specific governance, and have very specific workflows and orchestration. So having not used it, I don't really have a lot to say about this one. So maybe we just kind of
I played with them really briefly. I'll give a short explanation of the way my mental model for Cortex agents is. Snowflake so far has released different services. Like there's Cortex Search, where you have like an AI basically index a big document or a bunch of thousands of text, and then you can run natural language queries against that text specifically. So that's Cortex Search. And then there's Cortex Analyst, which is what we talked about before with semantic views, where you can ask questions, it generates the SQL, runs that SQL, returns the result. So there's these primitives in Cortex Search, Cortex Analyst. There's like data science agents as well. And then think of Cortex agents as a way to combine these different services and provide additional prompts and kind of pointers to an AI to say, if someone talks about this theme, this is how I envision them working. If someone asks a question about this, go use that thing. If someone asks a question about this, go use this other thing. So that's kind of the mental model for Cortex agents, in my mind, as a wrapper around all these other services that you can then turn around and push out to a business user. I lost your sound.
Oh, sorry. All right, we're good. All of that was nonsense. So the next huge feature is Snowflake Intelligence, which is a new UI, new website. You can try to see if you have access by going to ai.snowflake.com, log in, and you're probably going to get hit with a pop-up like I do that says it's not available yet. Even though it's public preview soon, so hopefully we can get a good look at that.
Yeah, soon. I don't get this. Like, how is this different than how is it different than the Cortex agents thing? Or is Cortex agents will probably power this, and this is just like a new marketing thing, or I don't know. Yeah.
So this is supposed to be for business users who don't know anything about databases and schemas and tables. So basically, you've curated a bunch of views for them, and the business users, like below average technology business user, can log in and start getting some intelligence out of Snowflake.
But you can kind of do it. What I don't get is like that's what Cortex Analyst gives you. It's like you log into a chat interface and you ask questions, but maybe this is a new thing
not
on
really,
top of that.
You have to pick a database and a schema right away. So that's like those guys are out.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So hopefully, I don't know. It's yet to be seen, but from the screenshots that I've seen, it is a nice, beautiful UI where they can just log in and start chatting. So
got it.
This
it's funny how this completely parallels. Like Databricks had some announcement. I forget what their thing was called, but they had this. It's crazy and they also bought a Postgres company. Like
they're keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, so there's other things we're not covering in this slide deck. You could see this is a screenshot from the table of contents in our blog post. If you want the slide deck, just put a note in the chat right now and say, hey, send me the slide deck. I'll DM it to you. Or you can like screenshot this or something. It's a little bit formatted weird here, but there's plenty of more AI related announcements, which we're kind of going to skip over today. All right.
We're through.
Finally moving on.
There's lots of juice there to talk about, right?
Yeah, for sure. Non-summit announcements. So of course, after summit, the product releases kept on coming, just like they do every single month, which is why we're doing a monthly webinar. So snow site updates, a few very exciting things here. And I have more screenshots in the blog post if you want to see all the screenshots. Comment, send me the blog post and I'll send it to you. Account-wide task graph. So we've always been able to see Snowflake tasks at the database level in the UI. Now under the monitoring tab, you now have task history. You have this really cool observability thing where if you hover on the previous runs tooltip, you could see like all your previous runs here. So this is just a demo account that didn't have many previous runs of this fake graph that I created here with task 1 through task 4. But this is now like an account-wide feature if your tasks are crossing databases and referencing each other that way. You also have this very cool, similar to dbt Cloud or what we have in Select, where you can see kind of how long each quote unquote model is taking. In this case, they're tasks. But you could see kind of where your bottlenecks are here, which is also pretty cool. I guess that's all I'll say about that, other than just go ahead and explore it for yourself. That is the best way to kind of get exposure to any one of these features. This is already GA. You can log in and see this right now. Managing integrations in Snowsite. So most people know what integrations are, but just in case you don't, so like if you need a storage integration to your S3 bucket, or if you need a Git integration to your GitHub account, or an API integration for your OAuth provider or your SSO provider like Okta, these are all called integrations in Snowflake. And before, they can only be created, managed, and observed using SQL. Like show integrations command, but now we have a nice UI that will show the integrations. So this is Snowflake kind of upping their game in that observability area also, and just like user friendliness. So you could see here's, if you click the create integration here, you get these different options of the types of integrations you can create. If I then click this, it then brings you to like a templated SQL screen. So it's not 100% GUI yet. But it's much easier than like Googling the docs and figuring out how to create the integrations on your own. SQL updates. So we did a LinkedIn post on this, but this is one of my favorite additions to the SQL syntax since group by all. It's called union by name or union all by name. This is similar to like if anyone has used dbt Jinja or dbt macros before, they have one called union relations. It does something similar, but this is really powerful because it works with CTEs as well. So if we just kind of let's just glance at this code. So we're selecting Jeff as first name in this CTE and Skoldberg as last name in this CTE. So these columns don't line up. They have different columns. And then engineering is the department. So we have 2 rows with engineering as department, and then we have null placeholders for first name and last name. So
yeah, and this is nice because it was so annoying anytime before if you ever wanted a union, you'd have to like handcraft your 2 CTEs to like exactly line up with the same set of columns or tables, whatever you union in. Oftentimes, which would involve like putting a placeholder null because it like doesn't exist there.
This is, it's such a big win. And there's a debate about, hey, do I continue to use dbt macros or do I use the native feature? I use the native feature. I don't really worry about, hey, what if we migrate away from Snowflake?
Yeah, that would be the only reason to like design to pick that one. But, and if you're making design choices around what if we migrate off of this platform, it's kind of pointless. Like you just then you're just not going to take advantage of like you might as well by that logic you wouldn't cluster anything either.
Right.
So like your migration's going to suck either way. Like
my dbt projects are littered with group by all instead of like dbt utils group by whatever macro that they have. So I always prefer the native.
I'm kind of like minimize macros because it just kills readability. You're like, what does this thing do?
What does it do? Yeah. So that was the only big SQL update outside of AI SQL, which was announced at Summit. Data engineering updates. We have a few things to cover here. Artifact registry, which is a horribly confusing name for, you can now like basically anything that you could pip install. So you have the Python package index, also known as PyPy. for those Pythonistas out there. So anything that is available in PyPy, you can now use in a Snowflake UDF. The downsides here is you can't use it in a Python worksheet. You still have to go the other way. But if you're creating a UDF, you can now use the PyPy. I don't think there's too much to say other than this is super useful, and we now have access to a lot more packages. Like, for example, like Polars is a very popular alternative to Pandas. And people love Polars because it's fast, it's multi-threaded, it's made for massively parallel processing, like that type of thing. So you can now use Polars in Snowflake if you want to.
Yeah. So previously I think you could only install from like their Anaconda thing. And if you want to do like a custom package, it was like a nightmare.
If it was outside of Anaconda, you had to create a Snowflake stage and then stage the wheels. And it was like pretty technical.
Yeah.
All right, we are getting towards the end here, so we just listed all of the other updates that came from June that didn't kind of merit their own slide. And I don't even think I'm going to read through them. I'll let the folks read through them on their own while Ian and I kind of wrap us up here.
Yeah, I think it's good I think that's a good place to end. So a lot of different stuff covered. I think the summit's really the big stuff, and a lot of the feature releases in June were obviously focused on those summit announcements. And I think the net new things were obviously less exciting than the massive announcements at summit. So hopefully this was helpful. We'll plan to keep doing this kind of each month. They'll probably won't be a full hour. We'll see, because there'll be like less to talk about each month, but hopefully this was helpful. There's a blog post on our site already. If you just go to select.dev/posts, you'll find our post Jeff did on June. We'll post this recording to YouTube as well if people want to watch it there later. And then we do have a form eventually on the website. You'll be able to sign up for last month in a Snowflake publication specifically if you just want to get that post emailed to you each month. If you have any feedback, we'd love to hear it. If this format is useful or not useful, I'd also love to hear that. And yeah, thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to us. Hopefully it was enjoyable. And thanks, Jeff, for putting all that together.
And once again, if anyone wants the slides or either one of the blog posts, the summit recap, or just the last month in Snowflake June recap, just send me a DM. I'm happy to send it off to you.
Yeah. We could also maybe talk about posting them on our website, just so there's a link there. But yeah, we'll figure it out. Cool. All right. Have a good one, Jeff. See ya.
Everyone. Bye. Thank you.